Ever since we were introduced to the character of Isshiki Otsutsuki, the question on everyone's mind was, where was he? As in, where was Isshiki when every single event took place on this planet? We went through the events with Kaguya, Hagoromo, Indra and Ashura, the Senju and Uchiha. We also went through 4 great ninja wars, the last of which led to the resurrection of his own partner who almost killed him over 1,000 years ago. Not to mention an event which nearly led to a guy crashing the moon into the planet, thus wiping out all life and vegetation. He never showed up for any of this, even though at that point he had not found a vessel. It just doesn't make sense. However, I think the reason why it doesn't make sense is because it shouldn't. It's nonsensical. Why would Isshiki just sit around doing nothing for 1,000 years? Why would he not just leave and search for a suitable vessel on another planet? Well, that's because he didn't just sit around doing nothing for 1,000 years. There was another way. And of course, I'm referring to the concept of time travel. You see, what we need to accept is that everything we learned about Isshiki came from Amado, someone who doesn't have first-party knowledge on what happened in the past. Everything we learned in regards to Ishiki's past either came from Isshiki himself or it was made up by Amado. We don't know. Either way, we can't take what's given to us at face value, especially when it doesn't make sense in context of the story. In that, based on what's explained to us by Amado, Isshiki came to the planet over 1,000 years ago alongside Kaguya, since the Otsutsuki travel in pairs. Their goal was to plant the divine tree and harvest its chakra fruit, but for some unknown reason, Kaguya turned against Isshiki and attacked him while he was off guard. She did enough damage to him that he was left on the verge of death. However, Isshiki managed to survive by taking over the body of a nearby monk called Jigen. He did this by shrinking himself to a very small size using the ability called Sukina Hikona. He then flew into Jigen's head and connected his lower body into his brain in order to feed off his nutrients. He did this because he was too weak to implant karma on Jigen, nor did he have enough chakra to perform the technique. It's confirmed by Amado that even to this day, Shiki still lives within the head of Jigen, feeding off his nutrients like a parasite. Only now he has full control over Jigen's body. It's also confirmed that Isshiki was able to implant a karma seal on Jigen after he regained the strength needed to do so sometime down the line. Now, this is all fine and dandy, I have no issues here whatsoever. Where I start to have a problem is when we get into the timeline of events and Ishiki's motives for staying this course. For one, it was revealed to us that the events with Kaguya happened over 1,000 years ago, which means that Isshiki has been inside the head of Jigen in this shrunken state for over 1,000 years. We know that he hasn't left Jigen's body since he needs it to survive after what Kaguya did to him. Now, what this also means is that Isshiki has had the shrinking ability active on his own body for over 1,000 years non-stop, which is absolutely ridiculous. We know this shouldn't be possible since Kawaki was drained of his stamina and chakra after having Sukina Ikona active for the better part of a single day. And I'm fully aware of the fact that Isshiki himself likely has better control over the ability since he is the original user. However, 1,000 years is a little ridiculous. What we also know is that selecting someone to bear karma is actually a delicate process since not everyone is compatible or possesses the body that can handle the true power of an Otsutsuki. This was confirmed to be the case for Jigen, as it stated that Ishiki's chakra was too massive for his body, so Jigen started to deteriorate over time. This led to Isshiki choosing not to resurrect within Jigen's body since he would likely die within a few days, even though Jigen was 100% Otsutsukified. So to get this right, we're expected to believe that Isshiki remained in a dying body for over 1,000 years while having the shrinking ability active the entire time, even though using the ability is stated to make the body die faster. This just doesn't make sense. Now, I mentioned earlier that time travel would be a better way to string this all together, in that Isshiki didn't live on Earth in a cave for over 1,000 years in a dying body, ignoring all historical events. Instead, he traveled to the future version of this timeline using the time travel turtle. Now, this might sound crazy, but hear me out for a second. For some strange reason, a lot of people are under the misconception that Urashiki was the first one who initially had this turtle when it was first introduced, but that's not the case. The time travel turtle called Karasuki was introduced in Boruto episode 127, where it's said by the newscaster that an ancient relic was discovered on the sea floor, and that efforts are currently on the way to break the sealing jutsu placed on it. What they also noticed is that it had an unusual unusual pattern carved into it, which Boruto later connected to a location where they found one of the remaining buds of the divine tree. Isshiki later confirmed that the turtle is a tool used by the Otsutsuki, but he didn't bring it to the planet, he only learned about it on the news. He then stole the object and used it to travel back in time so that he can take Naruto's 9 tails power from him when he was just a child. So in essence, the turtle is a tool used by the Otsutsuki to travel through time. Now I have no idea what the rules are for this device, but it's highly likely that Isshiki traveled to the future using the turtle so that he could find a proper vessel. It does make sense since the humans during Kaguya's time likely didn't have the genetic makeup required in order to become a perfect vessel. Now what's also possible is that Jigen needed a scientist that could create a method in which a vessel is able to pass karma onto another person. I do believe that Isshiki himself needs to physically touch someone in order to implant karma as he did with Kawaki. However, he's unable to do so since he can't leave the brain of Jigen. So he had to find a way in which Jigen himself could pass the karma seal onto new vessels. And that's where Amado and the technology we see him create for Jigen comes in. This is why we see Jigen randomly appearing to Amado promising to help him get his daughter back if he helps him with his goals. That is when Jigen time traveled to the future. So in essence, either the time travel turtle belonged to Isshiki or he has one for himself, which is separate from the one shown in Boruto episode 127, which is also very plausible. What this would mean is that Isshiki arrived to this future timeline the same year Amado's daughter passed away, which is also the same year Boruto was born. This lines up perfectly with the timeline as it explains why Jigen's dying body survived this long. It also explains why Isshiki was never present in any of the events of the past, especially the one where all life on the planet was about to be wiped out by the moon. This wouldn't have been good for Isshiki since he didn't have a vessel at that time, and he also needs the humans and vegetation in order to cultivate the God Tree, because again, the God Tree basically sucks up all the life on the planet and then stores that power in a chakra fruit. So you would assume that less life being available on the planet would make the chakra fruit weaker, and Isshiki wouldn't want that. So it would make sense that if Isshiki was present during that time that he would have done something to stop it. So it does make perfect sense that he just wasn't there. He basically skipped out on that part of the timeline to give humans time to develop the technology he would need to conduct the karmic transferal process through his current vessel. This makes way more sense than Isshiki just deciding one day to create the Kara organization after 1,000 years of doing nothing. Now there is an argument that Isshiki could have just left the planet after realizing that Jigen wasn't compatible and that the body was dying. He does have space-time in jutsu since we've seen him use it in the episodes, so Jigen should have been able to just look for a vessel on another planet. However, we have to take into account the possibility, this is a possibility, that it isn't so easy to find a planet with life, or maybe he thought Jigen's body wouldn't last that long. So using the turtle to travel 1,000 years would make more sense to an Otsutsuki. What I also realized is that Jigen had a black orb-like object on his stomach, which cracked after he exerted too much power against Naruto and Sasuke. The problem here is that Jigen doesn't normally have this orb, and neither the other karma users. This likely means that this was created by someone for him to use. Maybe it wasn't Amado, but it definitely isn't a normal part of the body. And there's also the machine he used to recharge Jigen after his battle with Naruto versus Sasuke. What I'm trying to say is that this totally corroborates my theory about Jigen needing technological aid in order to remain alive. Now, am I saying that this is 100% true that Jigen did come from the past and use the time travel turtle to come to the future to get a better vessel? No, it is possible, but it's not 100% facts. Of course, you guys points, or if you found any plot hole in the theory itself, just drop them down below and we can discuss them, of course, as per the usual. If you guys like the video itself, drop a like, and if you're new, subscribe, and I'll see you guys on the next one. Peace out.